Today I have James Maguire on. He's a Crumbl Cookies franchisee. They own 7 of them, and he got in early on. And so we talk about some of the challenges and some of the great things about being on with a brand, especially a brand that is just a rocket ship like Crumbl was. Also, why did he decide to diversify? Why now? And why did he decide on a particular concept in pickleball? There's a lot of different brands that are popping up in pickleball. I'm a huge fan in general of pickleball. And hopefully one of these days I'll be an investor in one of these brands. But he gets into the brand that he chose, why he chose it. And I think you'll find it very interesting, this conversation with James.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
James, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Erik. Appreciate you having me.
So we had a mutual friend, David Perez, who I knew. I brought him into Liberty Tax like 100 or 200 years ago. It was a long time ago. And then he's just gone on to do some really cool things. So he introduced us, and I found out that you were a Crumbl franchisee and you're doing some stuff in pickleball. And so I'm like, I got to get this guy in the podcast. So thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And David, man, just a quick shout out to him. Incredible dude. Great guy, great staff. If you want to lower your taxes, talk to him.
I like it. I like it. All right, let's get into your story. How in the world did you find Crumbl?
Yeah. So long story short, I was in the military, didn't like being told what to do. So exited that gracefully. Really enjoyed my time. Got to do a lot of travel. Got into finance, personal finance. I was a personal financial advisor, fully licensed, and it was my own book of business. It wasn't like I was with a big firm, and I loved that. I just loved being able to have my own schedule, meet my own people, service clients, help people. And so I thrived with that for probably about 5 years, did that 5 years full time. And, one thing that I always love to note is no salary. It was straight commission, knocking on doors, meeting people. So it was a challenge, but taught me a ton. And then my brother, who worked for some Planet Fitness franchisees in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, the Valley, he was kind of growing with their company. And he's like, I want to get out of this. I want to be the owner. He got to see what that looks like. He's 25, 26 at the time. I'm 23, 24, and we're just hungry for more. We want to do something different. And him and I have been entrepreneurs, man, forever. We had paper routes when we were kids. We had dog sitting, pet sitting. If there was money to be made around our town, we were figuring out how to do it. And so it's just kind of in our DNA, I think. And so long story short, his commercial brokers in Planet Fitness were like, hey, you guys should check out this cookie thing. It's popping up everywhere. They're wicked good. And so they mentioned it to the owners there at Planet Fitness. They weren't super interested, but he kept looking into it, sent me some info. And we were both in a decent spot, just family-wise, life-wise. We were kind of cruising. And we were like, we need to do something more. And so that was 2019. We started looking into it at the end of 19. And then the beginning of 2020, we flew out to Utah, did a ton of due diligence. And we're like, all right, this is our chance. This is incredible. You taste the cookies for the first time. I think it's important to like the product. That because
sugar, flour, artificial stuff.
Who doesn't like that, right?
Good.
Yeah. Who doesn't like that? And then you just get a shot of insulin after and you're good to go, right? So we checked it out and we really enjoyed the product. Yeah. And, this was our first time getting into business ourselves. And so we did a lot of due diligence. I flew out to Arizona a couple of times, checked out those stores. We would just sit in the parking lot. People probably thought we were creepers, counting the people coming and going. That's what
you're supposed to do, though. I mean, that's old school research. And I know people that still do that. When you're looking for sites and all kinds of stuff, when you're looking at brands, go old school and do some of that stuff. So I love that.
Yeah, and I was super used to that, like knocking on people's doors for finance, right? And requiring referrals and asking the tough questions. Like, so that was up our alley, and we didn't know any different either. And we still do that. Like, so we're getting into a new franchise, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but did the same thing, visited the sites, watched the people come and go, reviewed the data. So that was 2020. We got accepted, met the founders, Sawyer and Jason McGowan. We said, hey, we want New England. And they were like, nope, we'll give you one license. And we're like, well, we're not really in this for one license. Like, we really want to do multiple. So they kind of tugged us along, and we're like, well, if you open your store and you do good and your ops are good and your metrics are good, we'll do more. And so anyway, we opened our first store in October of 2020, Halloween. And who knew, now again, I'm not a baker here, right, in the beginning, but who knew the barometric pressure, Erik, would adjust the baking levels of your cookies? And like the second weekend we were open, our entire cookies were just raw, just totally raw. We had just gotten a snowstorm that morning, and it was a disaster. It was just a total disaster. Shut the store down. We were freaking out. We're losing money.
That bad? You shut the store down?
Yeah. Everything was raw. We had a line out the door. We literally had to eat raw dough and tell the customers that we can't sell you this, But we ended up fixing it and just learned a ton through the process. I mean, I can't tell you, and you know this because you've been in the industries for a long time, but there's nothing in college that can teach you how to be a business owner. No business class, no master's doctorate program. I mean, a true business owner, you learn on the job. You learn that the barometric pressure does not allow your cookies to bake in the proper amount of time. Like, you can't learn that in the textbook.
And even then, let's pause there, because the franchisor didn't tell you that. Is it because they didn't think about it, or they didn't know until it actually happened? Because they were still young at the time.
That's a wicked good question. And you're exactly right. And that's the answer, is they were so young. We were the 70th store to open, and there was nobody on the Northeast, not even on the East Coast. We were the first one really on the East Coast. And how we figured this out was we were working with corporate on the phone with them for probably 6 hours, just mixing dough and throwing it away and mixing dough and throwing it away. Like, it was the worst. I got flashbacks.
Yeah.
I'm triggered. But we called some other franchisees, and somebody pointed us to actually an incredible girl who owns a store, Emily, out in Montana, Billings, Montana, incredible franchisee. She walked us through the first question. I kid you not. The first question she asked was, "You guys have any weird weather lately?" And so she told us exactly what we needed to do. As soon as we did what she told us, dude, we were open within an hour or two. We got cranking. But to your point, yeah, Crumbl was just really new, and they hadn't had that happen very often yet. And so, as a brand new franchise, you got to expect those pain points. Like, there are going to be some serious pain points that, as a business owner and a franchisee, you're going to have to figure out. You can't always rely on the franchisor to give you the answer.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is, if you're a franchisor and you're frustrated that you're not awarding as many franchises as you thought you would, this is the reason I created the Franchisor Mastermind. If you want access to the information, the techniques that the best franchise sales organizations are using to award franchises, and you want what mature brands have with their playbook of having happy, successful franchisees that grow the right way, then you might want to check out the Franchisor Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections. They want the playbook to achieve both short-term and long-term success. They want to increase enterprise value in their brand. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. And some people think 70 locations, they should have all this figured out. Well, there's different things like that happen with these franchisees open up in different markets, different parts of the country. There's all kinds of stuff that people, franchisors, franchisees don't think about. And that's one of the, reasons that, people should be getting into franchise, because somebody's figured out the mistakes. And the mistakes aren't always figured out by the franchisor, because they had a handful of locations that were successful. Franchisors figure things out because franchisees like yourself had a storm, open up, had different challenges opening up or cooking or whatever the challenge might be. And then that goes into the playbook, so future franchisees won't have that issue. At Sola Salons, there's one of the franchisees had the wrong water something going into the salon suites, and it was a wrong size from the curb into the location, and it was like a 6-figure problem for that franchisee. So then we would, moving forward, it was part of the operational details that they would give you. They're like, hey, make sure that the size of the water going into your unit is this particular size, or else it's going to be very expensive. And it actually saved us on one of the leases that we ended up signing, because we had the landlord figure that out beforehand, and it was the wrong size, and they actually changed it for us. So I just want to, make that note. Just because a franchisor has 50, 60, 80 locations open doesn't mean they have everything figured out yet. They figured out a ton of stuff. And I know they did a lot once COVID hit. They were on it with technology and all this other stuff. But, I think it's important for franchisees and franchise buyers to realize that, franchisors are always improving, and they improve because of good franchisees that figure things out like you. So.
Yeah. And that's 100%, that's 100% accurate. Like you hit the nail right on the head. And I think the franchisor and the franchisee have to have that mutual agreement, that understanding. And I know tons of franchisees, and I'm sure you do as well, that it's all the franchisor's fault. It's their issue. They should have had this fixed. Well, yeah, they need to get a good playbook going, but they can only do as much as the information that they have. And let's be real, Erik, it's your investment. It's your money. It's your responsibility to make sure you're profitable. It's not the franchisor. They're giving you that playbook. That's what you signed up for. And so, yeah, there's some times where Crumbl, we battle back and forth. We have a good relationship with corporate because we were so early on, but there's some other things where it's I get it. That's a real struggle, and I'm not going to hammer you for it because I totally understand, So
I think that's a good franchisee too. Once you get to that point where you start to understand each other, the franchisor really understands the franchisee, and the franchisee understands the franchisor. You look at it from each other's perspective. That's when you're at that point where it's a mutual relationship, and you're not always going to agree with each other, but at least you can talk things out and move forward and make the system better regardless. So that's a healthy place to be. Having a franchisee with an attitude like that is always good for a franchisor, because franchisors are not perfect.
Yeah. And be mindful. I would say one thing in my early career with Crumbl is, man, I'd be really quick to get on the email. You know what I mean? I'd be really quick to send a text message. But you're right. Over time, it's this is my responsibility, and I need to definitely own it. So yeah, I definitely have learned a ton. But back to the college thing, man, I feel like I have my doctorate in business, and I'm just starting out. 7 locations, that's not much compared to much bigger franchisees, but just the amount of stuff you learn, like the landlord stuff. I mean, we learned so much with these leases to save money, put it on the landlord. I love that you said that. You wouldn't know to make sure that pipe was bigger unless it happened. And so it's that's the cost of doing business. So yeah, that was wild. That was a wild time. Definitely. I got some memories, some good ones, but some that I like to forget.
So going into more challenging times in the cookie business, I know this, broadly speaking, I think it's, there's just more competition opening up. So what's your mindset when more competition is moving in? Like what would you do differently, if anything, or what's your mindset moving forward? Because this applies to anybody, whether it's fitness and you're in yoga or Pilates and more people are moving in, or you have another restoration company that's coming into your market, or whatever it is. Competition, like Crumbl was one, I think they were first to market, first at scale, like they were, and then eventually competition moves in. Happened to us in the salon suite business. So what kind of advice would you give people that all of a sudden have competition moving in and it's might be changing some things in their business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's kind of there's maybe two answers to that. I think it depends on what your goal is with the franchise. Do you just want to be like a one shop? You want to just get one, maybe it's a retirement plan, or your kids are going to run or something like that. Or do you want to scale? So I think for like the one-off, like if you just want to do one or two, something like that, I think you need to be really thoughtful about your due diligence. You need to be with the brand. Number one, is it a sexy brand? Is their marketing good? Do they have a good product? Have you been there? Have you liked it? Have you experienced it? So I think obviously that's on both sides, but you got to like it. And then I think your location, if you're just going to do one or two, like there's nothing more important than I think location. And at this stage, I would sacrifice a little bit of rent cost being higher to be in that right location, to have the corner of the market where all the traffic is, where all the people are coming, if I'm just going to do one or two. So I would sacrifice for that. So on the second side of that, if I'm going to scale and I'm going to do multiples, and this is where we never wanted to do one location. We were always thinking 5, 6, 10, something like that. So what we kind of did is we were a little bit strategic in trying to control an entire market. And so there's one franchisee that snuck in, really nice guy. But we essentially own, if you're familiar with New England, we essentially own Crumbl from the border of Massachusetts north. So that was kind of our plan. Our first location was right on the border of Mass. We just kind of planted that flag there. And then we said, okay, what are the most populated locations and where's the best sites traffic-wise, 15 miles or 15 minutes around this area. And we spent hours and hours driving locations, driving sites, doing the due diligence to make sure that when we got those licenses that we knew we were going to get, that we had the right spot for them. So I would say, like, if you're going to scale, really try to control a region or an area and build goodwill with the franchisor. Tell them what your vision is. Tell them what you're passionate about. Talk to them about your team, about, building out that region or that area. So we have Massachusetts, and then we have 4 locations in New Hampshire, one that's unbuilt. And then another franchisee came east New Hampshire, so towards the coast. So we skipped that location, and then we went straight to Portland, Maine. And Maine's incredible. The people up there love sugar, Eric. Like, it's crazy, man. It is crazy. They love sugar. And that's one of our highest volume and most profitable stores, that and Vermont. Vermont people love sugar too. And because they're 2 hours away from any other locations, that's why they kill it. And so because they're less populated, they're more focused on like Portland or like Burlington. You're not going to be able to put any other competition there as far as Crumbl. So that was kind of like our first thought, is let's secure Crumbl locations so that no other Crumbl franchisees come in. And then to kind of answer the last part of that question, maybe like outside competition, because let's be honest, I look at Crumbl franchisees as competition. Like, I don't want them taking my revenue, right? In a healthy way. But yeah, so we have competition in Massachusetts. There's a cookie company called Cookie Monster, and they have a lot of food trucks. So they're actually really mobile. And so that can be dicey. Like, we've never had them park outside of our store before, but I think we would win if that was the case. But yeah, you have to think of that, because there was Insomnia Cookie. I think they're still around, but they're more of like a college focus. And then you've got that other cookie brand that's in New England. As far as that for us, there isn't a ton of competition. But one thing I would say about competition is you can't be afraid of it. Like you can't let competition hinder you from making a big choice and putting yourself in the best location. On top of that, I think it's just know your competition, you know, understand who they are, understand what products they have, understand their marketing. If they have any marketing, make sure your marketing is better. Make sure yours is literally sitting on top of their building. And we've tried to do that before, where you geofence right around their store and you just hammer people with Crumbl. You know, but there's always going to be enough, in my opinion, there's always going to be enough to go around. But what can you do to bring the cards more in your favor, you know? So that's kind of what I'd say. If you're going to scale, man, like you've got to have a vision 3 to 5 years out to say, I need to get this region and we need to lock it up quick. And so, yeah, I think for those who are scaling, like that would be my biggest note.
So you think you're going to kind of stay tight? You think you're going to just make these things and just keep them and keep them cash flowing, or do you think you might sell them?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've definitely thrown the idea of selling them around. Obviously, and you know this, being in the industry, you got to buy something that's profitable. You got to buy something that's on the uptick. A lot of times, if your sales are up and down, like that's tough for a buyer to look at. So total transparency, last year, our sales are down from before. And there's a couple factors to that. One would be the economy. You know, just it's more expensive. We've raised prices a little bit, like everybody else. So it's more discretionary spending that we're looking for from people. And then the other factor is, like when we opened our last store, I think there was only maybe 500, maybe 600. Now there's over 1,000. And so you have to understand too, if you get in early, that's awesome to get into a franchise early. There's a lot of hiccups, a lot of pain points, but also the ride it's just sometimes a rocket ship, man. And
it
I'm
was
losing
Crumbl
my hair.
for sure.
I'm losing my hair on top because of it, but there's a lot of ups to that. But then when it plateaus and when they stop selling licenses, you need to be careful, be mindful that there's a good chance it could come down and plateau. And so that's kind of what we're seeing all of last year. We've had a really nice uptick this January over last year, which is really positive.
It's good.
So yeah, we've had some people that have approached us for kind of our region. You know, we haven't really entertained it a ton, but I think if the numbers were right and we could come to a really good agreement for both sides, I think we would totally offload for sure.
Well, thanks for all of that. And I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in the whole industry in the years ahead. I think there'll be some players that are around that aren't going to be around. And then there'll be a handful of players that probably are pretty strong out of it. All right, let's talk about pickleball. Like, I'm a huge pickleball fan. I don't have any investments in any pickleball franchisors yet. I've had the opportunity to invest in a couple of them, and I have not pulled the trigger. I'm much more of a cash flow investor right now. I'm not the best at being a great angel investor. Much better at being a good cash flow investor.
Sure.
But I've been interested in the pickleball space because I'm a fan of pickleball. And I know that you got into a pickleball franchise. So tell us about that and how you found it and why you like it and all of that.
Yeah. So really funny story is the labor market, and it's not funny. It's actually really sad. We could talk for hours about this, I'm sure, but the labor market is really freaking tough, right? And so with Crumbl, like you're talking high school, college students, you know, and just being frank, like they're not the most reliable people. They don't really care about being at work. And I'm not going to say that's a general term because we have some incredible staff. Like we love our team, but it's hard. It is really hard when you're producing a product from scratch. So the number one thing that we started thinking about mid last year was diversification. If we're going to continue in business, we want to diversify into something that's less labor intensive, something that's more EFT, modeled monthly revenue. And Jeff, my brother, and I, who are partners, and our other kind of partner, and then our new partner that we just picked up for Pickleball, we're all athletes. We like working out. We like staying fit. And my brother was playing. He was playing out in Arizona. That's where he lives. And it's just, again, it was another thing. It's just picking up. It's getting hot. And it's like, man, these courts are everywhere. And then you start hearing like Tom Brady investing and, and Mark Cuban and Gary Vee. And it's like, all right, like this is interesting. Like a lot of money's getting thrown into some of this stuff. And so summer of last year, Jeff and I played, and I'm like, this is actually kind of fun. Like I could do this. It's less on my knees. I'm getting old. I don't want to run as much. Right. And so that was a factor. So we liked it. We liked the product. We liked the sport. You're not making it every day. And then for, I don't know, some reason, just something clicked. And I said, I got to look for franchises. Who's franchising this? What's going on? Who's getting in the space? And so early or mid last year, there was like 3 or 4 that I had found. I actually live in Delaware and there's one in Maryland. So I'm like, all right, let me sign up for this Discovery Day. I'll go check it out. Called Dill Dinkers, little amateur hour, branding wise and some of that stuff. Great hearts, great people. But it really opened my eyes to the space and some of the data that they were sharing. And then I just started following the PPA. I started following the MLP and I'm like hooked. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm watching on YouTube. I'm like, my wife's like, what are you doing? It's midnight. I'm like, I'm watching pickleball. So, yeah, we just started looking into it. And so we just, again, heavy due diligence. He was checking places out, Chicken and Pickle, Pickle Kingdom out there in Arizona. And then we found one called Ace Pickleball Club down in Georgia. And we visited there 2 or 3 times, couple trips, met the founders, and we were close. Like we were so close to signing an agreement with those guys. Again, great guys. I have nothing bad to say about them. They have a really great product. But then the Pickler, and I don't know what it is about Utah companies, but they always, they always leave an E out of their name. So Crumbl has no E. The Pickler has no E. It's like, what is going on out there? But so we ended up signing on with the Pickler. One of the main factors was they have the most locations open for a franchise right now. And I think it's 7 locations. It might be 8. They're opening their first franchisee location in Naperville, Illinois, March 22nd, I believe. I'm going to try to swing out there for that opening. But so they had the most open, they had the most data, and their marketing is pretty impressive compared to some of the other brands at the moment. And, you know this, and a lot of people probably listening and watching know that you could be the greatest baker ever. You could be the greatest pickleball, the greatest, guitar player. But if you don't have good marketing and nobody knows who you are, you'll never sell a thing. And so that's super important to us. Some of the other big things with the Pickler that are really, really interesting is the guys that own it, really down to earth, great people, but they're all about relationships, and the relationships that they have with the pickleball community is pretty incredible. So, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but they just announced a partnership with the PPA, Pickleball Inc. And so that's huge for the franchisee. If you're a franchisee, to partner with a huge organization like that that's just growing exponentially is super valuable. Like, we don't even have a place open, and our franchise is more valuable now than it was 3 weeks ago. So having those partnerships and really getting aggressive on that. They have a partnership with Nike Youth as well. And so, it's just they're hustling, and they don't even have a franchisee location open yet. And so, so we're all in for that. It's a much different space than Crumbl. Thankfully, my brother Jeff's got a lot of experience in that monthly model, that EFT model, low labor model with Planet Fitness. So we've got a lot of collateral that will help with that. But I'm just excited about it. Like, it's just going to be awesome to walk into work or walk into one of those places and just people are laughing, having fun, playing sports, getting healthy, having social time. Like, what else do you want,
I love it. And so Chicken and Pickle, they have, food. They have a lot of food there. This, as I'm looking at the website, and I've looked at it before. I've looked at the one in Logan. They have 9 indoor courts, have a deep court, outdoor surface, which is important. Inside, an event area, tournaments, and drop-in play. So I think they're doing different types of tournaments and stuff that I think is great as well. But is there no food, no drinks? Is it all just pickleball?
Yeah, and that was one of our biggest factors because you started introducing food, and you know what that means? That means more labor.
Yep.
And like I said, labor is a tough market. So they don't offer like legitimate baked or cooked food. Obviously, they'll have power bars and snacks like that. They've got drinks, energy drinks, things like that. There are some options. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. They have some options.
Go ahead.
I don't know.
Nobody's
Hopefully
listening.
they don't take my licenses away. They have some options for potentially doing like beer, doing like a keg or tap or something like that. I think that would be super low maintenance. Again, I don't know if it's going to work out super well. So I think they might be testing it in one of their locations. Like you're not going to go crush a 2-hour pickleball game and then just go crush a couple beers. And maybe you will. I don't know. I probably won't. But yeah, so no food and really no beverages.
So are you going into like warehouse space or cool like industrial or just like where Kmart used to be, or like what are some of the locations that would be interesting to the Pickler?
Yeah, so we're actually we're literally diving into that now. I was just at two locations yesterday down here in the Philadelphia area. And it's a tough question because the Pickler right now in Utah, they have industrial space, like flex space, and they also have like retail space. And being in the industry, you know, the cost between the two is much different. And so if you're going to open a location because of this monthly revenue model, you are literally going to win before you even open if you can get really good rent. And so that's really the trick is, all right, you know, do we take TI or do we get lower rent? Do we get into a flex space or do we do more prime real estate, A+, right on the main strip, right? It's a tough question because with our performer, we've got to make sure we got to make money, right? So we're kind of looking at all right now. We'd like to probably be in more retail because there's just more maybe traffic flow, but we're using a lot of AI with some of these tools that the brokers have to determine where people are traveling and how much traffic is coming by. So that's a tough question, but I think our number one goal is we've got to have an A+ location for our first one. We got, because there's a lot of risk. We got to make sure that it's going to be profitable. So yeah, I wish I had a straight answer. It'd be fun
to kind of see. I understand how you don't know. I was in New Orleans a couple of weeks or about a month or so ago, and we went and played at kind of an industrial type area in a neighborhood that's kind of changing, and so that was cool. It was much like this. They had some coffee, some drinks in a fridge. But it was all pickleball. It was the main thing was pickleball. It was a really cool facility. And then about 3 months ago, I was in Austin, Texas. On the east side, they have a new place that had just opened up as well. And one person working there, quite a few courts, ball machines, neither of these were franchises. They were just mom and pops. But I really like both of them. I like businesses, franchises that are good labor models. Like at Front Street Equity Partners, basically all of our brands, one of the things that we look for is a really good labor model. Maybe it's easy to find employees, they're paid really well without it impacting the bottom line too much for the franchisee, or there's just few people working. But I like the simplicity of labor versus food and even some of these there's a lot of franchises out there that are just complex when it comes to labor, expensive when it comes to labor, or a lot of turnover when it comes to employees. And we don't like that. If you can avoid it, we try to avoid it. And it sounds like this is an answer for you to avoid a lot of the labor issues that a lot of.
Well, let me ask you this, Erik, because you're obviously an avid pickleball player, and I love that. Maybe one day I'll get to play with you and just get crushed. I'm telling you, the couple times that I played, I'm playing with people that are like 70, 80 years old. They're killing me.
Dude, you need to get to the point where you can beat an 80-year-old. Like that'll be a win. It'll
Yeah.
take you about a month, and you should be able.
But let
You
me
should be
let
able
me
to fix that problem.
yeah, let me ask you this. So when you're going to some of these places, who do you see on staff? Like who do you feel like
Typically, it's a
is
pickleball player.
yeah, yeah. And so that's what we're hearing, that's what we're seeing, that's what we're learning. And so like if I'm a young pickleball player or even an old pickleball player, let's say I'm retired and I love playing pickleball, well, we're going to give our employees a free membership and we're going to pay them. So come and play anytime you want. So we think, even though there's going to be a little bit of labor required, right, especially if we're doing events and things like that, we think the talent that you'll attract, because it's kind of a niche, you know, that you'll have better opportunity for labor.
In Austin, when we were playing there that morning, they had some tournaments there. They've already had some tournaments there.
Yeah.
And the lady that checked us in is a pickleball player. And then some of the other people playing, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning when we were playing. There were some of the professional ones that are on teams. I can't remember the name of the teams, but like some of these cities have teams, and they were on that particular team. They compete nationwide, I believe. But you know, here's a pickleball place, and you know, one of the professionals was playing there with some of their friends, and a lot of people are coaching. What are you guys doing with coaching? Do you have coaches in there or trainers in there to help people?
Yeah, they're going to have, so the Picklers actually got an online program through an app that they're going to allow people to, they can coach with anybody they want across the country through the TV and the technology system that they're going to have. But then we're going to have people on staff. Yeah, we'll have a specific trainer for every location, and there'll probably be a 9 to 5, or you'll be able to schedule clinics. I'm pretty sure there's 4 free clinics with every membership. So you get 4 free clinics to work with that trainer, and, you know, with your monthly membership. And then once you're done with that, you could pay for more if you wanted. So yeah, we're going to be attracting, and that's why I think the model's really interesting, is because we're going to be attracting athletes. And, you know, in our industry with Crumbl, we find that if you can get some good athletes and work around their athletic schedules, they're typically your best employees, because they're hustle, they're competitive, they understand like you got to show up or the coach isn't going to put you in. So yeah, we're excited about that. But yeah, there'll be some trainers. The staffing, you know, you're looking at a manager, probably 15, maybe 25 part-time people, and then probably like an event coordinator. So we're looking at maybe 30 people tops, whereas with Crumbl, we've got like 50 people a store. Plus some, you need some cushion.
Think about that. 50 people for how many square feet? 1,200, 900 square feet?
2,000-ish.
2,000?
Yeah,
No.
2,000.
For Crumbl, 2,000 square feet?
Yeah.
Oh, because you got to bake and all of that, right?
Yeah. It's all from scratch. So our smallest store is 1,250, and that is tight.
Yeah.
And then our biggest store is 2,400. It's a little bit too big. So, but it's in the best location. So I'd rather pay for that than not, you know? So yeah.
Well, let's talk about financing this, because these things are not cheap to open up. So what are your plans to pay for these picklers?
Well, I thought that's why we were talking. Weren't you and I going to... Listen, the answer is always no unless you ask, right?
Yeah, that's right.
No, so financing, so we're going to go SBA with a couple of them. I think we can get up to like 5 million, you know, until you have to go outside of the SBA. So we're going to do SBA with a couple. And then because of the Crumbl's cash flowing, we have some really good cash flow with Crumbl. So we're going to leverage that with some banks that we are trying to build relationships with. Banks are literally my favorite people in the world. I just love banks. So we're trying to make a relationship with a bank that we've got a lot of money with and just kind of utilize them. And then, you know, and then do some self-funding. We really wanted to try to not give up a ton of equity. We did that a little bit with Crumbl in the beginning, and then we bought our silent partner out. You know, just our mindset is operations is so important. And if you can get an operational partner, like now you're talking 3 people that can go run and build, as opposed to just 2 or just 1. So yeah, our third partner that we just brought on, really, really good friend of mine, just got a really nice payout from a position through a sale of a company that he's with, which he didn't have to get, right? He's an employee technically, but yeah, he's coming on with us, which is going to be awesome. So we're just going to run hard. But yeah, we're going to do SBA and then try to leverage the equity in some of our buildings. And then, so we've got 13 licenses. And to be honest with you, Eric, like we want to scale big. Like we want to try to get to 30 if we can. So that may, there's going to come a point, especially with these big build outs, right? I think you're looking at probably 800, close to $1 million to build one. And so there's going to come a time where, and you know where it is, right? There's that crossroads where you're going to need an injection of capital to really keep going. So I think when we get to that point, we'll probably look for some outside capital, maybe a partner to bring in some cash, or at least have the ability to leverage.
Well, it'd be cool if you could get some of your own, if you could buy some of your own buildings,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I think if I had to do it over again at Sola, I would have purchased, we had 12 locations. I would have purchased a handful of those if we could have.
How big are those,
some of the
square
Sola,
footage?
7,000 to 10,000.
Okay. Yeah.
So, especially if you're doing like up and coming areas, because you're on the you might be on the outskirts of like prime commercial, but maybe it's a little bit more destination that has some good, visibility. That might be good for you guys. And if you could pick up some locations by purchasing them, that'd be great. I know some of the Sola franchisees and just in general, some of the Salon Suite franchisees in general have done very well by purchasing, like very well. So, and I know you might be able to find some investors that you could partner with on that, because you could partner on the real estate itself. And I know some real estate investors that just do that. Like they would be the ones that would want to partner with a brand like that, franchisees like you, to be able to invest in real estate. So that might be something.
That's a great idea.
That would be good.
I never thought about doing the investor side just for the real estate. You sound like David here. He was telling us if you guys keep making all this money, you're going to need to start buying big buildings.
Yeah, get some
it's
good,
true,
get
right?
some good depreciation, accelerated
Absolutely.
depreciation out of that stuff. And it just sucks when you have to recapture it. But if you're a qualified real estate professional, and then you can have some other tax, be able to mitigate some of that. So, well, man, it's been fun having you on. It'll be interesting to see where you are at, when you get to 30 locations. Maybe in 3 years, we'll see you at 30 locations.
Oh my gosh. My hair will definitely be gone if
It'll
we
be
do
gone
30.
or gray at that time. We'll find
Probably
out.
both.
So, we'll see what happens then. But man, thanks for coming on. This has been a fun one.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.